As an enjoyer of ancient Chinese and xianxia fantasy romance dramas, I absolutely could not refuse to check out this recently released FMV game that was mentioned by some of my favorite creators, Dodger and JesseCox. Road to Empress was certainly an impressive game made by an indie studio, but I cannot in good conscience recommend playing it because of these points. Here's why you should hold off on getting the game, at least for now. I won't go into story spoilers for this video, but we'll be mentioning mechanics that will relate to important story points to make my case. Of course, I have to mention the positives first. After all, this was a game that I did finish on stream. More on that later. Now, I've never really played FMVs before, but am very familiar with visual novels and story-focused narrative games. A full-motion video game uses real actors and footage instead of still or live 2D rigged artworks to provide the game visuals. I've avoided this genre in the past because it's often accompanied by a horror or thriller tag, and it's not really my favorite genre, especially if it involves real actors. Danganronpa and 999 though, on the other hand, are some of my favorite games to have played. The game often revolves around multiple choices that you can make, and it leads to different endings, either bad endings or multiple good endings. The game's story is inspired by Wu Zetian, China's only female empress. You start off as the lowest tier of consorts in hopes to work your way up the status ladder. The story is not a one-to-one depiction of history, but certain elements are definitely references to events that did happen according to the history books. These historical facts, though, lock you into certain story elements that have to happen, no matter how hard you try. But it does not affect the overall enjoyment of the story. Even though I grew up watching a lot of dramas about historical China, I retained absolutely zero knowledge of the names and events. The story was fully translated to English and very easy to follow even if you're not familiar with Chinese terms used. Visual cues and the way the dialogue was written was super well done because of that. Each scenario you select flows really well as you make all your different choices. One thing I didn't mention yet is that this is not the first game by this indie studio called New One Studio. They're actually the developers of a #1 ranking game in 2019 on Steam called The Invisible Guardian. So why have you might not have ever heard about this game before? The reason is it's region locked to China only. But it has brought a lot of eyes and attention to the FMV style of games over there. Road to Empress may be the longest interactive film and television work on the market today, with 10,000 minutes of footage, 300,000 words in the script, and 100 days of filming. It's pretty much a full-on drama-sized, like TV drama-sized filming production. And actually on the actors' pages on Drama Wiki and stuff, it's listed under movies that they've performed in. All that is for less than a $10 game on the US Steam market. Wow. The reason why the studio released this game globally was to try to attract overseas attention and took the time in translations to make sure it's adapted well into English. The team reviewed over 2,000 actors for their roles, and the resulting cast is nothing to be scoffed at. You've got a main cast consisting of actors who've previously had roles in Meteor Garden, which is the Mandarin version of Boys Over Flowers, a very famous Japanese rom-com story, Falling Into Your Smile, Sword and Fairy, so all these, as well as both big and small names. Focusing on a great cast and script is pretty much essential to make such a narrative-driven game a success. It was practically immersing yourself into a C-drama as you played the game. Each choice you made kept the storytelling fluid and consistent. And speaking of choices, I also have to point out that the game UI itself was really polished. It looked much like a gacha game at first, as there was a mailbox gifting you some currency in the form of flowers and eggs. And you can also have in-app purchases to buy more of that currency. But you do not need to use this currency to progress in the game. There's a lot of these kinds of polls for media franchises, like Take Two Be Hero X, the donghua, which has a character voting system that affects what happens in the final rankings in the first season. But I don't think the rankings in this game in particular affect anything in the storyline. And aside from the currency, the overall placement of menus and interactive areas are pretty straightforward. It does feel like they've designed this for a mobile-first UI, which makes sense because the mobile version will be out shortly after the Steam release. I find the little comments that the characters make when you reach a bad ending or at the end of the chapter really funny at times, which makes me want to make the wrong move sometimes to view all of the content that's available. And it also doesn't help that you need to reach every single ending in order to get 100% completion in the game. And for some reason, they also integrated a personality quiz as a fun bonus of sorts, I think. Depending on what choices you make in the game, you'll get a horoscope-like detail sheet revolving around things like wealth and relationship once you finish the game. Though, the game does give you a big warning that it's just for fun and to not take anything that's written in the passages too seriously. But while I praise the overall design of the game to be well made, there are some flaws to it that really made me feel a bit in recommending the game to others. The game boasts around 100 story branches, but very similar to otome visual novels, there tends to be a lot of bad endings. Like how 100 Line Defense Academy was structured, there are so many joke endings, which are still quite fun to watch. Like, it's pretty common in a lot of ancient C-dramas where one sneeze in the wrong direction can lead you to a spiraling death trap. But the title of the game says it all. Your aim is to become the Empress, and that should heavily influence the decisions you make in the story. And like I mentioned before, some historical facts are added to the game, so no matter what decisions you make, you have to select a specific choice in order to progress in the story. And while I was researching whether or not to play the game, I couldn't find out whether or not there was romance in the game. After all, in the trailer, it shows 3 princes, and you're more likely to need to pursue the romance of one of these to become an empress, right? Well, I'll just tell you straight up. No, it's not like the romance in otome games where you need to select specific lines in order to reach a romantic ending. That actually doesn't matter for, I would say, like 99% of the game, so think of it as the common route that you're actually playing for it. And oh boy, there's QTEs in this game. Freaking quick time events. I'm not a big fan of QTEs in general. Like, I think in the otome game Love or Pretend, they had a timer countdown to make your selections, and I just don't like it. Like, I can see where this is going. In many cases, if this was real life and you're in that situation, you really don't have much time to think of what to do for your next step. But I can still criticize what I don't like about this, as it's a biased review after all. And like many ancient Chinese dramas about raising the ranks of the inner palace, this story features core elements of backstabbing and betrayal. I too have been betrayed by the developers of this game. Okay, the first offending thing is that they used freaking AI for all of the artworks shown inside the game. The illustrated storyboards that are shown in the main progression of the game, as well as the additional stories that you can read in the character information pages, all of it is obviously AI generated art, and there's no consistency in the faces drawn, and there's clear artifacts in the buildings and bodies, and oh my god. Okay, yeah. And even worse, they didn't disclose it on Steam. So Steam does allow developers to use AI, but it must be disclosed to them, and it's usually shown on the listing so that gamers can make informed decisions before purchasing a game. And they didn't do it for this game. As an artist, I feel so betrayed and disappointed whenever developers use AI assets for their finished works. And yes, it definitely does affect my decisions when purchasing a game. Like, think about it. For a game to spend so much on the quality of the actors, the story, and the UI, and then to discredit the importance of good artworks made by real artists is pretty offending, actually. Like, they could in theory train an engine to use in-house artists, but like realistically, I doubt that happened. And if they did, they would be probably mentioning it because they would boast about their engine. So it's obvious they are trying to hide this under the rug. Now, if anyone asks if I recommend the game, I will definitely mention whether or not AI art was used. And one other thing when I tell people my recommendations for this game is the ending to this game is clearly sequel baiting. Like, to put it up front, you cannot finish the game or the story until the sequel is released. The path literally tells you to jump to part 2 and opens up a pre-register website for you to sign up for when the second game comes out. And other things like your personality quiz will be transferred into the sequel to continue. Rather than a conclusion to this part of the game, it just offers you a freaking trailer for part 2 as part of the ending sequence. Like, what the heck? Us global players are blindsided by this fact because there's nowhere on the Steam page or on their website that it mentions that the game was a two-parter, which is, on the other hand, clearly mentioned in Chinese press commentaries and things. My heart literally sank when I was presented with the trailer for the second game, because throughout the game, I was wondering how on earth are they just going to wrap up the story in 16 chapters? As you progress to the second half of the game, it didn't really feel like you're going anywhere close to the ending. In the Chinese press commentaries, they mentioned that the game split into two different parts. The main Yan part and then the Empress part. So you don't actually think about becoming an Empress until the second game. Supposedly, the sequel will be released sometime in February 2026, but I cannot confirm this date as it's mentioned in a passing Steam discussion forum post, which is also quoting from a Little Red Note post. Take it what you will. Obviously, I was passionate enough about this game to take my time to play through the whole length on Steam.
I will backstab. Betrayed.
As well as writing up a script and video to talk about it. The immersive story was just that good. It's also very hard to find games in English that is about ancient China. Like, sure, there's a couple of MMORPGs about xianxia, but I think the only RPG of this aesthetic I've played was Sword and Fairy, and that was it. So my recommendation would be to just hold off on playing this game until the sequel is made. Else, you would be stuck like me in limbo for 6 months or more, waiting for it to finish the story. Heck, I may even forget about it when it actually comes out. But if you like watching shows as episodes come out week by week, and you're okay with waiting for the next part, then just go right ahead. Do it. Play it right now. It's worth experiencing still. And let me know which non-death ending you got as your first ending. A full playthrough of this game only takes around 8-ish hours, so it's a good short game, but you still get a pretty good amount of entertainment throughout those 8 hours. If you liked watching this video, check out this one about another game I did a quick review on. Or this one that's recommended for you. I stream games and pack openings for TCGs like Pokemon on Twitch. And if you want to support the channel, consider joining the membership or check out my wishlist on Throne to support upcoming content ideas or other ways listed in the description box below. Bye for now!